I want to start with a story, and I found this story in the Science of Mind magazine, and guess who else found it? Judy. Judy found it too, and she actually shared it on Facebook because Reverend Allen, who founded this center, actually put it in the magazine, and I just loved it. And so, just in case you missed it, here we go. So, in Bangkok, there is a golden statue of the Buddha, and the statue stands 9 feet 8 inches tall. It weighs 5.5 tons, and it recently was thought to be valued at about $250 million in its gold. It's believed that the statue was built in 1403. And about 300 years after it was created, in 1757, the Burmese army was invading Thailand. And so the Buddhist monks at that monastery had been warned, and they knew that the army that was coming was capable of brutally destroying sacred sites and treasures. So they quickly thought quick, and they covered this golden Buddha in like plaster. And they were also smart enough to know that probably wouldn't fool the army, so they put colored pieces of glass all over the plaster and painted it so that they thought it was sort of valuable, but not really, right? So sadly, during this invasion of the Burmese army, none of the monks survived. They were all killed. But the golden Buddha was left undiscovered, safely beneath its mask of plaster and glass. So then 200 years pass. In 1957, the entire monastery in Thailand was going to be moved. It was all being relocated by this group of monks. And while moving that large statue, suddenly their ropes broke, causing it to fall. And that fall created a large crack in the plaster. And as you can imagine, as they moved in to inspect the crack, there was this golden light emanating from the crack. And so quickly one of the monks got their little hammer and chisel and started chipping it off to discover that underneath all that plaster was in fact this statue made of real gold, solid gold. So can you imagine their surprise? And this is a true story, but I think it's a powerful lesson for each one of us on our monthly theme of cultivating authenticity. So we come to spirituality, we come here to remember our spiritual identity. That's why we're here. So we come to learn who we really are, a God being. And if we're seeking to be authentic, what we're doing is we're seeking to reveal that gold inside of us, right? Our spiritual self to the world. Ernest Holmes said, the divine presence, being everywhere and filling all space, must be in me. It must be that which I really am. So what he's saying is, you're a golden Buddha. You're a golden Buddha too. Deep inside each one of us is this golden light of love. And here, as we learn, we have our little cosmic hammers out and our chisels doing the work to uncover the love that lies inside of us. And that is some dusty work, y'all. There's like little pigpen clouds around some of you. So there are some questions. There are 3 questions I want to think about in this journey to authenticity. Number 1, what caused us to plaster our true identity anyway? And number 2, what is it that's covering our inner light? Or in other words, what's your plaster and glass really all about? And number 3, is it really time to remove the old disguise? The outer thing that we've created. So let's dive into each of those 3 questions. The first one is, what caused us to plaster over our solid gold, light, love-filled, true identity in the first place? So I think we hide our light for the same reasons the monks in 1757 plastered over their golden Buddha statue. And most of us did this plaster work so long ago that we don't even remember why we did it, nor what we were hiding. We've forgotten, just like the monks years later had forgotten. So what I believe is that we hide our true selves so that anyone who might not have our best interest in their hearts will just pass right by and not bother us. Hey, if you're looking for something like valuable, someone valuable, don't look at me. I'm simply just a statue which sort of looks interesting, but I'm really just some plain glass, nothing to see here, right? That's kind of what we're doing. Like, don't look at me. See, long ago, there probably were some invaders in your world. Some people who could not really appreciate who you are, your brilliance, your talents, your emotional responses, your goodness, your very light, your energy of pure love. And see, these invaders were often living in our own homes or were very powerful people in our lives. And if you're like most people, there were some experiences that gave you ideas that the world was not a safe place for you to be all golden and sparkly in, right? It's not that this was like a conscious thought. We were just receiving all these subtle messages that we should fit in and just be ordinary and stop demanding so much attention, right? People need us to be a certain way for their lives to be comfortable. Am I right? Mm-hmm. Right? And they want us to fit into molds for their convenience. It's normal. I'm a parent. I wanted my child to just fit into my world too, right? I get that. So in her recent novel, it's called City of Girls, author Elizabeth Gilbert, the person who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, and is a speaker and all that, she wrote this perfect paragraph that I underlined when I read the book. It said, after a certain age, we're all walking around this world in bodies made of secrets and shame and sorrow and old, unhealed injuries. Our hearts grow sore and misshapen around all this pain, yet somehow we still carry on. Can you relate to that? I certainly remember being like sore and misshapen in my heart. I was trying to protect myself, and for me, I was just walking around life in this disguise of a happy person, of a successful person, of a good mom, a fabulous employee, a great friend. Those were all the kind of disguises I was in, but underneath all of that, my light was hidden because I had so much disappointment and anger and fear. I was functioning, but I wondered if what I was experiencing in life was really all there was to it. Like, is this it? Is this it? This is what I'm here for? I had to hide my truest self because she wouldn't be appreciated or she would be unseen or unloved. That's what I thought. Maybe you have other reasons for hiding your light, but those were mine, right? So another reason we plaster over our true selves is that we are identifying with our human reaction to the events in our lives. Like we begin to think of ourselves, well, I must be just an angry person, or I'm bitter, or whatever. And we have feelings of unworthiness and sadness and quirkiness that we know the world really doesn't want to see or experience because we don't want to see it or experience it in ourselves. Basically, because we can't love ourselves, we can't trust that other people are going to love us. So we cover all these things up with this facade, and that is why we've plastered our inner golden Buddha. Am I right? Okay, so the second question is, what are we covering ourselves up with? What is all this stuff? So most of us have spent a great deal of time, I can appreciate it. You've made this outer identity of who we are quite impressive, actually. I mean, think about some of the decorative work you've done to make your plaster pretty cool, right? But what happens is at first, we draw this little curtain around ourselves, around our most golden and brilliant self. I started drawing that little curtain closed pretty young in my life. Because I had questions that adults couldn't answer, or I was told I shouldn't sing too loud, my emotions were too big, but mostly I was told I talked too much. My desire to connect was not met. So I stopped trying to connect. So we start with keeping ourselves hidden with a little curtain, but over time, most of us begin to develop these elaborate thought patterns and behaviors that coated us with layers and layers of plaster that obscured and hid our spiritual value. We began to believe we were nothing special. Our experiences are just going to be average. Our jobs are most likely going to be boring. Our relationships would be ordinary. Our struggles would be real, and that we just jump from problem to problem to problem. That's what the way life had to be. And the plaster of not loving ourselves gets thicker and thicker. Oh, but we found some colored glass, didn't we? We found some colored glass to decorate our plaster along the way. We collect little brilliant moments to cherish, and we stick it to our outer selves, the story of our life. Maybe it was a vacation like I just had that puts a big old piece of colored glass, or maybe it's an accomplishment at work, or a new shiny possession that we just love, or a friendship that sparkles, and we tell ourselves and others, we're doing all right. We decorate our plaster of identity with things that help us look in the mirror and accept ourselves. And we use those decorations to kind of dazzle others. We decorate with the moments we do when we break through moments of self-love and appreciation. We've plastered ourselves to hide our light out of fear, which is the opposite of love. Marianne Williamson, who I love as a spiritual teacher, she wrote this seminal book called Return to Love, which is basically a book about going from a fear-based life to a love-based life. And this is too long of a quote, Rebecca, it's not up there. This famous quote, you all know it, but I'm going to share it anyway. Our deepest fear, the one that causes us to plaster, is not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You're a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. And it's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. And as we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. That was the end of the quote from Marianne. Each one of us is a unique expression of the divine. Each one of you is. And what stands between our authentic expression of who we truly are is the plaster that's covering us up with the false beliefs and thought patterns of unworthiness. Bottom line, our plaster is the refusal to love ourselves and claim our worth. So that leads to the third question. Is it time? Is it time to let our authentic selves be revealed? We spend so much of the time living as the person we think we are supposed to be. We stay in relationships that we think are supposed to last a lifetime. We remain in careers that we've outgrown because we need our resume to look right. We hold ourselves consistent with choices that perhaps no longer serve us because it keeps our approval rating high and doesn't rock the boat. Can you relate? We don't express our true feelings or our ideas because we fear rejection. I think it is time to step out of that. Have you ever heard the saying, be yourself because everyone else is taken? Right? We've probably all heard that because, and we probably all agree that's great advice, but we find ourselves sacrificing ourselves in order to fit in for other people to like and approve us. And the opposite of that is living in authenticity. I think the great spiritual teacher of our time is Brene Brown, and she writes, authenticity is the daily practice of letting go of who we think we're supposed to be and embracing who we are. So the third question about timing leads us back to our original story about the monks, right? Who are the invaders who have long left your temple? Or maybe there's still some invaders hanging around and it's time to kick them out, right? Because once we get those voices out of our heads, we can begin or we can continue some big work. Let's crack the plaster and see what's really there. Actually, my guess is your plaster's already been cracked. A lot of times the plaster gets cracked, and that's what brings you into spiritual seeking. So you can learn more about how to use that little hammer and chisel to get to that stuff inside. See, the monks dropped the statue and it cracked the plaster. And we also often crack our shell when we're in a transition, don't we? We get cracked open by a divorce, or by an unexpected end of employment, or a colossal disappointment of some kind, a sudden loss of a loved one, or we move to a new place and our little glass bits just fall off, right? Making the plaster covering less strong. And sometimes we can also get cracked open by really great, great things, can it? Like the birth of a baby can sometimes just crack our plaster, or finding a person who actually sees our brilliance and won't let us fixate on the plaster covering, or maybe a financial windfall. Basically, we get cracked open when something changes that will no longer allow us to hide our light. When something changes that makes us take another look at our deservedness or our lovability. We get a glimpse of self-love or self-esteem, and we acknowledge that it is within us, and we start uncovering it. And we do that uncovering by cultivating authenticity. So all month we're going to talk about, this is not about becoming someone other than who you are. It's really about releasing anything and everything that hides your golden self at your core. It's about stepping fully into your personal spiritual truth. And that lies in valuing that truer identity inside you. It's about becoming the loving energy that you are. So how do we do that? The first thing we've got to do is acknowledge who we really are. You're not all the plaster and bits of glass. Under that plaster of thoughts and beliefs, therein lies the self with a capital S, the golden Buddha that's in there. Under the plaster is the energy of love. At the temple of Apollo in Delphi, it's inscribed, know thyself. And this is where we've got to start to cultivate authenticity. How do we come to know ourselves? How do we come to know ourselves? We do it through self-discovery processes, journaling, therapy, spiritual practices, studying, getting help, because often we can't look in the mirror and see our brilliance, because if we could, we'd have already done it. You know, in the Four Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz talks about domestication. We learn to look into the mirror that our parents or the people around us want us to look into, who we're supposed to be. But when we take a good look at ourselves through all those things, journaling and all that stuff, we've got to have compassion for what we find. On this human plane, we're never going to be perfect. We aren't. We're not going to be perfect in our choices. We're going to be unique. We're going to be quirky, as I said earlier. We're going to have reactions to unexpected outcomes, and we're going to have parts of ourselves that we just don't like and don't understand. We are human. And we are always doing the best we can do. Take a deep breath. You're always doing the best you can do. And that compassion is love energy that you allow to get inside. This acceptance leads you to a new identity. But let's never forget that at the same time we're human, we're also divine. We are also that golden Buddha, spiritually divine, loving being. We're that too. And if we allow it, our spiritual self can soothe our human self. Our inner light can dispel the darkness that we fear. Love can dissolve any fear. And this thing called you, Dr. Holmes, invites us to start from this truth. Your soul belongs to the universe. Your mind is an outlet through which the creative intelligence of the universe seeks fulfillment. He's talking about you. You. So it's time to cultivate some courage to reveal our truest self. It's not possible to be seen if we hide. It's not possible to belong if we don't welcome others into our circle of intimacy and accept the invitation to step in other people's circle of intimacy and belonging. If we're going to cultivate authenticity, we've got to no longer hide the parts of ourselves that we're afraid for others to see. Vulnerability is required, and the outcome is not within our control. But courage will support us in those moments when we feel like if we tell our stories and speak our truth, people won't accept us. But guess what? Slowly the plaster is removed. And sometimes, some days, the going is easy, and other days we need some support. We need to have other people help us. And maybe that can happen right here. In this spiritual community, we strive right here in this room to surround ourselves with people we can trust. And we strive to be trustworthy when other people take their plaster off. Here we can begin to learn to love ourselves and accept the love from others. We talked about that in Sacred Cup this morning. You know, I really like how you've bedazzled your walls. I really do. But what I really love is when I see that little golden light inside you breaking free from fear. Carl Jung, the great psychologist, said it best, and I put this in the newsletter this week. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. That's a privilege. Take it. And I want to close with our affirmation of the day. Let's say it again. I
love and accept myself exactly as I am.
And who you are is perfect love.